Welcome to California in Focus. I'm David Mastio. Today we're talking about the cost of gasoline in the state of California again, and this time, who's pushing regulatory efforts to increase the cost of gasoline and other energy? Joining me today is the Center Square's Kenneth Trupp, who wrote this story. Kenneth, what's going on?
Hello, David. After a thorough investigation into who's pushing this new $162 billion increase in the cost of fuel, I found that the makers of electric vehicles, such as Rivian and Tesla, and those who operate charging networks, are some of the main backers of this measure. This is ironic because it will largely be paid for by poorer drivers who tend to live further from work due to the state's high cost of housing and who cannot afford new electric vehicles. So these people who drive the farthest and own older, less efficient vehicles will end up paying for the benefits going to Rivian, Tesla, and other expensive EV makers.
When is this going to happen?
We have a vote tomorrow on November 7th by the California Air Resources Board on whether or not to increase the requirements for the low carbon fuel standard program. The California Air Resources Board, also called CARB, is a completely appointed body, all but two of whose voting members are appointed by the governor. The low carbon fuel standard is a system by which there are credits given to producers of transportation energy that is better or less carbon intensive than the desired and changing standard over time, and requires people who make fuel or transportation energy that is worse than the standard to buy credits. The current standard requires that California reduce the intensity of its transportation fuels by 20% by 2030 compared to 2010 baseline. This new standard would require a reduction of 90% by 2046, which would significantly accelerate the moving target. Thus, you will see massive increases in how much these credits will cost if you are producing something like gasoline at a refinery, which is why last week we explained that it would probably lead to the shutdown of refineries and require importing gasoline to California, which would require almost 1,000 tankers to replace 5 of the refineries in the state shutting down. That's for the gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel.
So part of your story really jumped out to me, and that is the part about the electric vehicle market share slowing down significantly. And if I wanted to goose that growing problem for California, I would increase the cost of gasoline. And that's just what's happening. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Right. So let's just put out some more broader metrics here. The average EV is financed for $783 a month, which means that all these government and utility rebates, even if they're thousands of dollars, that's just not enough for most working families to afford to buy. When we look at the EV market overall in California, we saw growth, and the EV market has really slowed down. The market share for new vehicles in California that were EVs was 21.5% in 2023, and now it's up to 22.2% for 2024. But if you look at 2021, it was 9.1%. So EV sales as a portion of sales doubled very quickly, but have completely fallen off in growth. There's also the fact that the California Air Resources Board estimates that at about the 50 cent per kilowatt hour for electricity mark, it becomes cheaper to drive a car on gas than it is to fill up on energy from the grid. So with California energy costs rising faster and faster, costs about double the national average, and we're going to be approaching that break-even point with higher rates that have been requested. It just doesn't make financial sense even to drive an EV if you're looking at the cost of getting around. So a major price increase in gasoline from the new LCFS, CARB says this new standard will create a 47 cent pass-through cost to refiners that will probably 100% get passed on to consumers per gallon of gasoline next year. So if gas is going up that much, people might be pushed into driving these very expensive EVs, or at least those who can afford to.
Another part of your story is the electric car companies sound like they're doing a great favor for you when they say they'll give you a free EV charger for your house. But that's not the whole story, is it? You have to sign away something pretty big to get that free EV charger. Tell me about that.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit more about how LCFS makes people who run chargers money. Whenever a EV charger is used to charge a vehicle in California, whoever owns that charging infrastructure can collect LCFS credits. So if this is at like a Tesla supercharger station, Tesla is getting credits, is generating credits whenever someone is charging there. But that also applies to charging at home. So if Tesla or Rivian is providing a charger to you for free to you, by the way, these free chargers for you, they usually are paid for by taxpayers or utilities. So it's not really free to you. You're paying for it in higher taxes or higher energy bills. These get installed for you for, quote, free. You don't see the cost. And then they have clauses in their purchase documents that ban you from getting the charging information from your home charger and requires you to give the environmental credits to the company in perpetuity. So I looked at Rivian's own charger purchase documents, and when you buy a charger from them and install it at your house, you're going to be paying for the electricity, but they're going to be getting all of the credits.
Ken, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.